New terror strategy from ISIS and al-Qaeda. CBS News has learned that the groups have made even more advances in sneaking bombs inside laptop computers and making them undetectable by security.
Concerns that those bombs could be smuggled onto airliners caused the United States to take action. Last month, passengers flying to the U.S. direct from 8 Muslim-majority countries were banned from carrying on any electronic devices larger than a cell phone. We are now learning that terror groups are using airport security technology to test out their theories. Chris Van Cleve reports.
U.S. intelligence officials tell CBS News terror groups such as al-Qaeda and ISIS are perfecting and testing a bomb that could get past airport scanners. The new intelligence suggests they have been testing the explosives on airport scanners used to examine carry-on luggage. Exactly 1 week ago, a ban went into place barring laptops, tablets, and other large electronics from carry-on luggage on flights to the U.S. and U.K. from airports in 10 different cities in the Middle East and North Africa. U.S. officials were concerned about a repeat of this. Last February, a bomb concealed in a laptop detonated on board a Somali airliner shortly after takeoff. The plane landed safely. In a statement to CBS News, the Department of Homeland Security says terrorist groups continue to target commercial aviation, to include smuggling explosive devices in electronics.
NBC News has reported that Australia will conduct additional security checks on passengers flying directly from Muslim-majority countries in the Middle East to prevent security threats. The new rules follow similar measures introduced by Britain and the United States, but do not include the same bans on electronic devices in the cabins of passenger flights. Australian Transport Minister Darren Chester said in a statement on Friday, "Explosive detection screening will be conducted for randomly selected passengers and their baggage. Checks may also include targeted screening of electronic devices." The increased security measures will affect passengers flying directly to Australia from Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. Affected airlines are Qantas and Gulf carriers Etihad, Emirates, and Qatar Airways.
According to reports, Connecticut may become the first U.S. state to allow law enforcement agencies to use drones equipped with deadly weapons. New legislation for the plan, which was approved overwhelmingly by the state's Judiciary Committee this week, would ban weaponized drones in the state but exempt law enforcement agencies. The bill will now reportedly go to the Connecticut House of Representatives for consideration. Back in 2015, North Dakota became the first state to permit law enforcement agencies to use armed drones, but only with tear gas and pepper spray.
Hundreds of Muslim residents in a Paris suburb took to the streets in protest. Instead of chatting and waving signs, the demonstrators rolled out rugs and mats on a street for an outdoor prayer. According to local reports, the residents were protesting the closure of a prayer hall. The city of Clichy wants to turn the building into a multimedia library. However, France's Muslim community of 5 million is dealing with a shortage of mosques and prayer halls. But the situation in Clichy is a bit tricky. City Hall chose to turn the rented prayer hall into a library for the town's 60,000 residents after inaugurating another Islamic cultural and prayer center in the town.
As part of a major crackdown on what it views as religious extremism, China has banned wearing veils and abnormal beards in the western province of Xinjiang. The measure, which comes into effect Saturday, also restricts use of what it refers to as extremist signs. Xinjiang is home to a Muslim group which claims it faces discrimination from the Han Chinese. The definition of veil is currently unclear, but the niqab, which covers the face, and burqa, which covers the face and body, appear to be included in the ban.
Que realmente pasemos de que esto sea un problema sumamente común, ¿no? Y sumamente tolerado por nuestra sociedad, a que cada vez que ocurra una situación, la sociedad hable, la sociedad responda, las autoridades intervengan y realmente generemos una cultura social de cero tolerancia.
More than 100 people have been arrested by police in Spain as part of an investigation into child pornography. Authorities say they've seized some 450,000 images and videos, allegedly showing sexual abuse of children, including babies. Police raided dozens of homes across the country, and so far 10 of the victims have been identified.
High heels for babies causes worldwide controversy. Pee-wee Pumps, a US company, sells heeled shoes for babies, advertising to parents, quote, "Your little princess will be the belle of the ball with her first fashion statement." But with many babies dressed up on their website, including one in red satin and leopard print heels, it's been likened to the Lolita effect. The book, The Lolita Effect, written by Manickshi Gigi Durham, looks into how the media currently portrays young girls. But Pee-wee Pumps founder Michelle Holbrook told Today, quote, "Truly in the grand scheme of things, when it all boils down to it, it's just a photo prop." Pee-wee Pumps is also being criticised by UK campaign group Let Clothes Be Clothes. Over 250 of their followers have expressed their dislike to the Pee-wee Pumps advert.
Police in Belarus have raided the offices of an independent TV channel in Minsk, seizing equipment and detaining at least one cameraman. The Belsat network has given extensive coverage to recent anti-government protests in the former Soviet Republic. The channel is seen as an alternative to Belarus's state-controlled TV. Journalists working in the country say they, along with government opponents, are being targeted. We see that the attack on the press is continuing. We thought it would all end after the 25th of March. We thought that the repression would subside, but as we can see, the authorities are continuing their crackdown on journalists. Not all the journalists who were arrested on the 25th and 26th of March have been released from jail. Last weekend, several hundred people were detained and some beaten by armed riot police for unsanctioned protests in the capital. Over the past 2 months, Belarus, which tolerates little dissent, has seen a rise in anti-government demonstrations.
NBC News has reported that protesters stormed and set fire to Paraguay's Congress on Friday. Protests occurred after the Senate secretly voted for a constitutional amendment that would allow President Horacio Cartes to run for re-election. The country's constitution has prohibited re-election since it was passed in 1992 after a brutal dictatorship fell in 1989. Senator Desiree Massey from the opposition Progressive Democratic Party said, "A coup has been carried out. We will resist, and we invite the people to resist with us." Firefighters managed to control the flames after protesters left the Congress building late on Friday night. Protests and riots continued in other parts of the city and elsewhere in the country that went into the night.
The streets of Srinagar have turned into a battlefield. Indian security forces fired pellet guns and tear gas, trying to disperse thousands of protesters who shouted slogans and threw stones at them. Violence started on Tuesday when Indian security forces killed 3 civilians and injured dozens during a protest. Local police say one fighter was also killed during a raid on a house. On Friday, the violence continued and spread to other cities in Indian-administered Kashmir. Indian police say they had warned the protesters who came to the scene of the police raid and tried to shield the fighter before he was killed on Tuesday.
They should understand that coming close to the encounter site will jeopardize, will obstruct the ongoing operation, and that is why we don't want them to come close to them. It is their mistake.
For the fighters and protesters, it's a struggle for freedom that's been going on for nearly 70 years. They demand separation from India and say giving up is not an option. Kashmir, with its Muslim majority, has been unofficially divided by a ceasefire line between India and Pakistan since 1948. The dispute has already triggered several wars between the two nations.
Palestinians are demanding international sanctions against Israel over its approval of the first new settlement in the occupied West Bank for over 2 decades.
The Secretary General took notice with disappointment and alarm of the decision by Israel to build a new settlement in the occupied Palestinian territory. The Secretary General has consistently stressed that there's no plan B for Israelis and Palestinians to live together in peace and security. He condemns all unilateral actions that, like the present one, threaten peace and undermine the two-state solution. Settlement activities are illegal under international law and present an obstacle to peace.
Israel's Security Cabinet on Thursday approved the building of a new settlement in the occupied West Bank, even as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu negotiates with Washington to curb this settlement activity. The UN Security Council adopted a resolution to demand a halt to settlement building in December. Then US President-elect Donald Trump and Israel urged Washington to wield its veto. Israel for decades has pursued constructing settlements on captured territory.
China's defense ministry has said it is futile for Taiwan to think weapons can prevent unification with the mainland. A spokesman for the ministry made the comments Thursday, March 30th, according to Reuters. He said, quote, separatist Taiwan independence forces are the greatest threat to peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The Trump administration is reportedly preparing a large arms package for Taiwan that may include rocket systems and anti-ship missiles. A spokesman for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs urged the U.S. to stop selling arms to Taiwan and remain committed to the One China policy. The One China policy refers to Beijing's insistence that the People's Republic of China is the only legitimate government of both the mainland and Taiwan. The two countries have been separated since 1949, when communist forces established the PRC on mainland China and nationalist forces fled to Taiwan.
Now, North Korea has slammed the United States for deploying its B-1B strategic bombers to South Korea 5 times last month, saying Washington is pushing the peninsula to the brink of war with its military drills. The regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency said Saturday that the drills were sorties in preparation for a surprise attack on the north. The U.S. Forces Korea made public a joint exercise involving one B-1B on March 22nd, but it wouldn't confirm if there had been more. However, a source within South Korea's defense ministry has confirmed the U.S. did have B-1Bs make 5 flyovers during the past fortnight. Experts believe the U.S. is deploying its strategic weaponry to send a strong message to North Korea that it must halt its provocations.
Russia's foreign ministry says Moscow is being forced to take a confrontational stance in relations with NATO. The statement comes a day after the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson attended his first NATO meeting in Brussels. Tillerson promised to maintain sanctions and called on NATO members to unify against what he called Russian aggression with more military spending, noting that NATO was clearly not ready to return to cooperation with Russia in resolving regional security challenges. The ministry called for a radical change in NATO to ensure European security.
Starting from July, the expansion will see an increase of 18,000. The move is reportedly a response to a surge in NATO's budget. That announcement was followed by the launch of Russia's second Yasen-class submarine on Friday. Dubbed Kazan, the vessel is the newest Russian nuclear-powered multi-purpose attack submarine. A series of 7 Yasen-class submarines is to be built before 2020. These ships are armed with cruise missiles, land attack missiles, anti-submarine missiles, and torpedoes.
Iran is rejecting an allegation by U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis that it is the primary exporter of terrorism. Iran said on Saturday that the main source was U.S. ally Saudi Arabia. Foreign Ministry spokesman Bahram Jastami was quoted by Iran state news agency IRNA as saying, "Some countries led by America are determined to ignore the main source of Takfiri Wahhabi terrorism and extremism." Jastami was referring to hardline Sunni Muslim groups and Saudi Arabia's official Wahhabi school of Islam. Saudi Arabia denies backing terrorism and has cracked down on jihadists at home, jailing thousands, stopping hundreds from traveling to fight abroad and cutting militant finances.
Well, with the battle for Aleppo over, RT's Lizzie Phelan has discovered that many schools were used as bases by the jihadists. This is Lizzie's piece.
In Syria, there are no safe places, not even schools. In East Aleppo, over half are completely destroyed. During the battle for the city at the end of last year, much of the mainstream media, citing opposition activists, claimed repeatedly that the Russian and Syrian air forces were deliberately targeting schools. The Syrian government admits that schools were directly hit, but says rebels, not children, were the target. I decided to follow some of the kids of East Aleppo to their former schools to search for the truth. Here there's writing on the wall that says Jabhat al-Nusra above their jihadi flag. Here the leftovers of the infamous hell cannons that opposition forces were using so frequently, gas cylinders that they would fill with explosives and fire into government-held areas. The remnants all over the ground floor of this school, showing it was used to manufacture and store missiles and improvised explosive devices. So everywhere here we're seeing the residues of explosives and chemicals that would be used to make bombs. Here it says on the bag ammonium nitrate, this one coming from Turkey. And all of these materials would be blended, mixed in this barrel before they would be used to fill gas cylinders like this one and other homemade missiles, rockets, mortar bombs, you name it, they seem to have been making it here. Even though this school has been cleared by demining teams, the dangers are still everywhere. Buckets full of explosives left over, and these buildings are unsecured. As you can see, these kids, this destroyed area is now their playground. They're roaming around here freely. And now they're pointing us downstairs towards the basement. They're saying down here was used as a jail by rebels.
I used to live nearby. The militants would torture people. We could hear the screams. And we could hear the militants telling prisoners, "You have to join us. If you refuse, you will be executed."
This is the Masakan Hanano area in East Aleppo that just a few months ago was home to some of the fiercest fighting in this city. Now there's trickles of people slowly beginning to return to their heavily damaged homes, kids also returning to some of the public schools like this one, which has signs on the walls all around them warning children how to identify unused IEDs, mines and munitions, the legacy of rebels who once used these schools as their bases.
The billowing black smoke could be seen for miles. Up close, a terrifying inferno.
On the interstate, there is a huge, huge fire.
Raging out of control until one part of I-85 near downtown Atlanta collapsed.
We were aware of 85 collapsing.
A major artery used by 250,000 people every day shut down.
Right now, I guess everybody's just trying to figure out how to maneuver through the city.
Today, investigators scrambled to inspect the damage.
We do not know how the fire started. We do not have any leads at this time.
The Georgia Department of Transportation says the locked site was used to store non-combustible state-owned construction materials, including coils of plastic. This is a look before and after the flames broke out.
It's no different than having a plastic cup in your cupboard. It does not ignite. It takes something to cause something like that to burn.
Commissioner, why are construction materials allowed to be stored under such a critical freeway?
The storage area is not uncommon for any other state to store things under their bridges.
Still, last year in New York, a fire erupted under train tracks where a company had stored wood and fertilizer products.
It's a matter of public safety that you would probably not want flammable materials under a bridge.
Around the country, there are about 56,000 structurally deficient bridges, including 2,000 on interstate highways. This section of I-85 is not on that list.
This is going to be tough. This is going to be really hard to get to work.
Tonight, as Atlanta sees a surge in commuters using public transportation, what may be most incredible is that no one was hurt.
Lieutenant Don Grossmeyer said that a troubling trend is on the rise. Law enforcement in Ohio and other states are seeing a rise of opioid abuse. Motorists driving while drugged is dangerous, and it only appears to be getting worse. I don't know the numbers for that, but I can tell you it's a newer upcoming occurrence, Grossmeyer told NBC News. Just recently, within the last year, we've been seeing this. But we're definitely keeping an eye on it, J.T. Griffin, Chief Government Affairs Officer for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, said. The stories you hear are horrible. You hear of parents getting high in cars and just passing out. According to Griffin, opioids and heroin are not traditionally something that is abused while people are driving.
The global food crisis worsened significantly in 2016. On Friday, a report came out that conditions look set to deteriorate further this year in some areas with an increasing risk of famine. The Food Security Information Network said there's a high risk of famine in some areas of northeastern Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Yemen because of armed conflict, drought, and macroeconomic collapse. The network said that 108 million people were reported to be facing crisis-level food insecurity or worse in 2016, a drastic increase from the previous year's total of almost 80 million.
Devastating and deadly. The remnants of a powerful cyclone have swept along Australia's east coast, inflicting flooding and destruction. Tens of thousands have been affected, with at least 3 lives lost in the floods and fears for other people still missing.
It's unbelievable, mate. Look, the traffic lights, they're nearly under. Look at the signs over there. The houses, everyone's had to evacuate.
The disaster zone from ex-cyclone Debbie stretches 1,000 kilometres from Queensland State's tropical resort islands and Gold Coast tourist strip to the farmlands of New South Wales.
Great amount of effort has been focused the last 24 hours on flood rescues, making sure people are safe. We're now in a position where we're focusing on those that have been isolated, making sure they've got sufficient food and water, and then we expect by Monday that we'll be into the recovery mode.
For now, with more than 100,000 homes without power and communities swamped and stranded, many are still waiting for this nightmare to end.
At first it sounded like a huge dump truck or big equipment up the road. Then it got louder and I looked up out my window and through the trees and I could see the snow flow moving down the hill. Resident Monty Tuas told CNN affiliate KTVA. Juneau residents are on edge after an avalanche stopped just short of plowing into a series of homes in the Alaskan capital Friday. There were no reported injuries. It's the third time in roughly 5 weeks that snow has rumbled near a Highlands neighborhood. As of now, the town is under a high avalanche watch.
At least one Indonesian farmer has been killed and dozens of others are still missing after a rain-triggered landslide tore through a village in Indonesia's East Java province. A spokesperson for the country's disaster mitigation agency said dozens of people were buried by the landslide. Emergency rescue crews are at the disaster site working to assist victims and find those still unaccounted for.
第一代克隆猪了，大概成年体重了也是15公斤左右，就说基本上就长不大了。就我们这种表型呢是比较稳定的，繁殖力了也都不错。